Okay, another day. Before I continue on with the turbo kit, I have to replace a coil pack. I had a check engine light a few weeks ago, and it appears that the coil pack on the passenger side on cylinder number 1 tends to go after a while. It's also where the exhaust comes around, and I guess it may be heat affected. As you can see, there's not terribly much room between the head and the frame rail, so it's going to be quite tedious to get it out, but we'll see how we go. Okay, with the coil pack removed, and then I found out that I had been sent the wrong one, so I had to put in the old one back in. It's now time to take off the overpipe. The overpipe goes over the suspension. You can just see it down there. Unfortunately, you need to lift the engine by about an inch to be able to get it out. That will require getting a jack underneath the transmission and just raising the whole engine a fraction to get that overpipe out. So I've taken off the engine mount bolts, and now I'm going to put the jack underneath and see if I can jack it up. Okay, we have the overpipe out now. I had to lift the engine up using a jack. As you can see, under here we've got the jack holding up the transmission, and raising the engine by about an inch was enough to get the overpipe out. Now what I need to do is retorque the engine mounts to make sure they're snug and take off the back cam plate. Okay, now you're looking at the back of the engine by the transmission, and you'll see the silver plate, cam plate, held on by 3 bolts. They have to be taken off. That gets you access to the oil gallery behind there, which will be where we drain the oil from the turbo. So I have to take them off, and Works provide a replacement cam plate with a barb fitting for the oil return line. Okay, we've got the cam cover off now. Actually, you can get to it from the top fairly easily, and if we come around here, you'll see the old cam cover. This is the back. You'll see the sealant on there. That's the front, and this is the Works one with the barb coming up, and you'll see it's got a seal there. We'll just put some RTV around it just to make sure it seals properly, but that should be done. Now with the cam plate installed, you see there the Works cam plate installed. We've got RTV behind it to make sure it doesn't leak. Now it's time to shield these wires to make sure that they are tolerant to the heat of the turbo that will be sitting very close to them. Okay, now we're putting the heat wrap around the wiring loom close to the turbo. You see the heat wrap is a tube which is connected together via Velcro, and you can see we've got it around the main battery cable that goes to the starter motor, and we're about to do the rest of the wiring loom. Okay, we have now covered all the wiring loom with the heat covering, the heat protection covering, and zip tied it on. I've tried to make very sure that in the area around the turbo that there are no areas that are uncovered. Okay, now we have to mount the flanges onto the turbo compressor housing. So we have 2 lovely machined flanges, one for the intake and one for the outlet. So we've got some rubber seals and some bolts on which to mount them. So the large rubber seal goes onto the inlet, So we'll put that in there. Now we get the large bolts. It's just a matter of snugging them down. Okay. The smaller one has a hole, a threaded hole for the vacuum tube. Now, vacuum tube has to come off the side here and then go to the output of the compressor. So this is what drives the wastegate. So we have a tube that goes like that, and hence we have like that, so that comes around like that and in there. So we have to mount it in this orientation. So again, we put the rubber seal in, place it on the flange, and insert the bolts, insert the screws. Again, we just snug them. So this goes like this. The rubber hose goes to the wastegate around to here. There we have it. Now we have to add the oil drain connector pipe onto the output, drain output of the turbo. So first we add a light coating of RTV onto the gasket, and then we get the outlet and we actually angle it away from the actual turbo itself. The challenge here is to get this bolt started because it's actually underneath. Let's see. That's not going to work. Let's just add the top one to locate it. Now it started off threading in. There we go. Socket. Well, there's really not much room here at all. That just needs to be tightened, but you can see how it looks now. Okay, now we have to install a gold fitting into the top of the turbocharger for the oil supply. So it'll be around here, and there's this port here. You can see that it's actually got a constriction in it to ensure that we don't over-pressurize the turbo bearings. There we go. Okay, now we have to install the coolant connections. These are banjo bolts, and we have to make sure there's a crush washer on each side of the banjo bolt, like so. And then this needs to point up, and points. This requires a 17mm socket. Again, this just needs to be snug. None of these need to be torqued terribly hard. Okay, and now there's the one on the other side. And this needs to be point down. So where is it? This needs to point in the same direction as the oil outlet. Again, we need to make sure we have a washer on both sides. And this needs to point slightly towards the turbine housing, about 15 degrees it says in the instructions. There we go. So now we have the oil inlet, the oil drain, we have the water inlet and the water drain. Or perhaps, actually I believe water comes in from the bottom and goes out the top to ensure that there's always water in there. Okay, now we have to get the coolant to the turbo. We have to grab the coolant where it goes into the throttle, take the hose off where it goes into the throttle body, and it actually comes out here. So this whole pipe has to be removed. Okay, we've got the two water hoses now, one coming from the throttle body and the other one coming from the hard pipe that actually is fed from the water pump. So these are the water lines going to the turbo. Status update. We've now got the turbo mounting bracket in. It has to be loosely connected now because we have to wiggle everything to get it to fit, but that seems to be all in place. The heat wrap needed to be removed and then reapplied to get that bracket in, but now we need to, I think, put the OEM headers back on. Okay, we've now got the OEM header back into the car. As you can see, it's got a big heat shield, so it's probably going to be better for heat management with the turbo anyway. Now it's time to connect the up pipe to the turbo. So we'll just walk over to the table and we'll do that. So here's the up pipe. So the thing you have to do is to put the gasket on, and put the bolts in from the bottom. With a washer. So does it go this way, or does it go that way? Let's just check. So this must be at the back, so I suspect it goes this way. Bolt this on, and we need to test fit it in the car.
The idea is that we have all the mounting bolts, the header where it attaches to the header, the up pipe that attaches to the header, where the turbo is supported in the engine bay, and we just need to find an orientation where everything is sitting comfortably. Bolt. Goodness. And so on.
Okay, we're test fitting the turbo now. We've got the up pipe going to the bottom of the turbo, and we need to connect it to the exhaust manifold and to the mounting brackets. This is all done loosely, and then we slowly tighten each nut to make sure that everything is tightened up in a relaxed state. Once we do that, we have to take everything out again, and then we torque up the turbo to the up pipe. But after nearly 3 days work, it's good to see the turbo somewhere near its final position. Okay, it appears that we are missing, well, our turbo doesn't have the same bracket that the Journal turbo has, and as a result we can't actually connect it to the turbo, the upper turbo mount. So I've contacted Works to find out whether there is something missing or whether there's something that I've overlooked. In the meantime, I think we'll just start installing the front mount radiator, as that's really all we can do at the moment. Okay, we're going to prepare the front mount radiator for the car. So what we need to do, we need to add the water inlet and outlet, and to do that we need to first of all get a knife to cut open the hydraulic Loctite thread sealer. Okay, so we'll just open that up. There we go. And just put a thin film around the threads. Just has to be pointing off to the side here. That should do it. I'll do the other one in a moment, but what I want to do is to tighten the brackets.
exhaust spanner. I'm going to now mount the radiator. We've loosened the retaining bolts on the air conditioner condenser, and now I'm sliding in the radiator in front. So we've got the front mount in. We need to connect it to the air conditioner support. Go. Now we just need to so that's what it looks like in the car. It still has to be tightened, of course.